So thank you again, and indeed, my name is Isabelle De Voldere. Thank you for this invitation. And today I would like to say something about a recent study that we have finished on behalf of the European Parliament. But before going into it, I'll maybe say a few words about IDEA and the work that we do, just to give you some context of our work. And now I have to see how to move the slides. Yes, just a few words about IDEA Consult. So we're based in Brussels. Exist now for more than 25 years, and our main work focuses on supporting governments and intermediary organizations in a number of policy domains, among others, cultural policy, innovation policy, and industrial policy. I want to highlight just specifically what we do related to culture and creative sectors in terms of services, mapping studies, policy analysis, also strategy development support for organizations in the field. The topics that we work on range from supporting the sustainable development of cultural and creative sectors by helping organizations in the sector, but also by supporting and creating awareness at a policy level in different levels about the importance of sustainable development of the sector. We also do quite a bit on cross-sectoral collaboration with culture and creative sectors and open innovation, and digital transformation, role of cultural institutions and spaces in societal transformation, just to name a few. Maybe this is all a bit abstract. Just a couple of studies that we have recently done or are currently doing. Apart from the study I will immediately talk about more. Here you can see just a short selection of projects. So as you can see, for instance, for the Flemish government, we are currently developing a framework for monitoring the impact of the digital transformation program. We're supporting, that's another example of then rather supporting its strategy development, the Antwerp Royal Museum of Arts, in their business plan development. We're supporting the city of Ghent in preparing the bid for becoming Belgian European Capital of Culture. As you know, they have all the candidate cities have submitted their, in the first phase, their bid. So there will be a first selection soon. Just another one, and maybe we can talk about it later, is the Horizon Europe project we are involved in, EKIP, which focuses on creating more awareness on making open innovation with culture and creative sectors a standard in Europe, something that we are not yet there. And we will also tackle this in the when discussing the study. And then finally, maybe another study is that we do at the moment for DG EAC on discoverability of diverse European cultural content in the digital environment. It's with a European consortium led by our colleagues Pantea, and where we specifically focus on discoverability in the subsector of the performing arts. And that maybe links to some work that Mathieu is also working on. Mathieu, I give you.
Yes, you hear me? Okay. So, un petit mot en français, Delphine, je switch en français rapidement, comme ça je serai plus rapide. Donc, je collabore avec IDEA Consult maintenant depuis début 2023. Ceux qui me connaissent depuis un peu plus longtemps peuvent se demander, tiens, ok, que fait-il maintenant? Donc, vous savez que j'ai travaillé pendant quelques années dans le secteur et j'ai notamment travaillé du côté de Sambre Invest, du côté de Charleroi Métropole, dans la coordination de l'axe créative et digitale du plan Catch et Catch Turbo. Aujourd'hui, je suis vraiment avec IDEA Consult impliqué dans différents projets et notre rôle est de supporter la mise en place et le pilotage de consortiums d'innovation pour à différents niveaux en Wallonie, qui sont parfois liés à la S3 Wallonne, au plan de relance, à des projets Interreg. Et donc, vous voyez un petit peu les différents types d'actions que l'on mène à ce niveau-là. Donc, on a une bonne collaboration avec le département d'Isabelle, qui est plus lié au aspect culture et créativité. Mais vous verrez dans cette étude que quelque part aujourd'hui, il y a une vraie discussion sur le fait de faire cette open innovation entre les écosystèmes d'innovation et la culture. Et c'est vraiment un sujet dont on pourra parler, qui est un des éléments pour lesquels je vous avais alerté sur Wake en vous disant, tiens, il y a peut-être des choses intéressantes à apprendre ici. 2-3 exemples de clients et 2-3 exemples de projets que je mène avec notamment, pour les citer, l'accompagnement de l'IS-IT que vous connaissez, qui travaille sur les technologies immersives avec un transfert de compétences et transfert de technologies. Donc, on y reviendra plus tard. C'était juste pour remettre un petit peu le contexte pour ceux qui se demandaient qui je suis et comment je collabore avec IDEA Consult. I let Isabelle continue with her project, and we can discuss it later during the question and answer phase. Thank you, Isabelle.
Okay, merci, Mathieu. So indeed, now in the coming 20 minutes or so, I would like to say something about a study that we have recently finished on behalf of the European Parliament. It was a study that has been requested by the research team there. So they wanted to have a study that gave a full overview or as comprehensive as possible overview of what are the main structures, programs, instruments that the European Parliament and European institutions have when it comes to policy making relating to culture and creative sectors, and what has happened in the past 5 years, and then to also make a forward-looking perspective on what are potential topics, issues that the new CULT committee should focus on, or should at least have on the radar. As you know, after the elections, the new members of parliament have taken up their assignments from July onwards. The different committees have been formed, also the CULT committee, and they had their first meeting in beginning of September, where we then also have presented the outcomes of our study. That is not I DEA Consult, we did lead the study, but it was the joint collaboration with the University of Brussels, VUB-SMIT, KULeuven-CiTIP, who was primarily involved for all the legal aspects in the study, and then two individual experts, Sylvia Amann from Inforelle and Joost Heinsius, an Austrian and Dutch expert. Just for when we talk about the CULT committee and their competences, so this is just to highlight what is exactly the mandate of this CULT committee, and so what was also within the scope of the study. So their mandate relates all cultural aspects of the European Union, so cultural policy, audiovisual policy, information and media policy, and also cooperation with third countries, cultural diplomacy. So this was also the scope that we needed to take in the study. As mentioned, the main research questions that were presented to us was indeed to give kind of what is the current state of play, both with respect to the institutional context, who are the main institutions, responsible for culture and creative sectors policy making, what are the mechanisms, the instruments, but then also what have been the topics, the dossiers of main importance in the past parliamentary periods, and what is the outlook, and from there giving some options or presenting some options to the Cult Committee to further work on. Now, looking at the past, the past 5 years, we can conclude that when we look at the different topics that they have been working on, and policymakers have taken initiatives, we can actually distribute or cluster them into main groups. The first group of reactions relate to major emergencies that we had in that period. Of course, COVID-19, which hit the sector very hard, and where a lot of member states, also at the European level, have taken several measures to both during and after the COVID crisis to support the sector and act upon it. A second group of elements rather focused on tackling challenges and leveraging opportunities that relate more to structural transformations, and then we talk in the first place the digital transformation, green transformation, also on working conditions. Of course, these challenges were not new in the past 5 years, but also triggered by, for instance, the COVID-19 crisis. We do see that the measures taken and the initiatives being put in place at the level of the European Union definitely have accelerated in the past 5 years to also support these structural transformations in the sector. I'll go quickly over this one. This is just to highlight the methodology that we used when further analyzing the different topics and key areas in policymaking. So it was a combination of both literature review, horizon scanning that we did, and strategic conversations with several interviewees. I invite you all to take a look at the study itself, where this is all documented, and where you also find an extensive bibliography when it comes to the literature review. Now, what are actually the key areas of policy development that we have identified relating to culture and creative sectors in those last 5 years? You see them here listed. So we have identified several major topics where we have clustered our analysis around. For each of those topics, we make in the study a kind of state of play. Like, for instance, when it comes to strengthening the socio-economic resilience of culture and creative sectors actors, we describe the challenges, the main initiatives that have been taken, for instance, in that area after COVID, or as a consequence also of COVID-19. A lot of things have happened and initiatives taken related to working conditions. So we describe that in the study. At the same time, and we make this description both describing what EU policy makers have taken as initiatives, also other main actors, but we also counterbalance it with what we find in academic literature, also what we find in from relevant networks and groups for structural dialogue, like, for instance, the Voices of Culture, that also have often worked around these topics, published reports, also as a kind of counterpart for the EU policy making. So we brought all this together, and that also allowed us to not only describe what has been done, but also what are still relevant gaps, what are maybe trends and evolutions that happen in the sector itself that have not yet been sufficiently captured in EU policymaking, and as such, how policymakers maybe in the coming period can act upon it. So another example, for instance, stimulating the green and the just transition. In that section, you will find we describe, for instance, the new European Bauhaus, what it means for the culture and creative sectors, how they can participate in it, and how it happens in the field, the uptake. Just to give an example, also the different actions that have been taken to further green the Creative Europe program. Also on that side, things have happened. An overarching element in it is that in several of these topics, you see that culture and creative sectors have been named and analyzed in the past 5 years in several areas for their transformative power, we call it, in different other domains. Like, for instance, I pick out the role of culture for well-being. Already before COVID-19, a key report, I would say, has been published by the United Nations on, the World Health Organization, on bringing together all sorts of evidence that exists on what is exactly the role, the impact of culture for well-being and health. This after the COVID-19 crisis and during the COVID-19 crisis also, in that period, the importance of cultural actors, access to culture for well-being has been stressed also in Europe. It also got some traction here in Europe. And so you see that in that area, definitely in the last 5 years, things have moved, also supported by evidence and documented in several reports on by academia, but also institutions like, I say, the World Health Organization. However, despite all this evidence, the discussions, the advocacy for the role, the transformative role of culture and creative sectors in the European society or society at large, we also noticed when analyzing strategic documents at European level that recognition is still far from being established widely among EU policymakers. Just when we looked at the strategic agenda 2024-2029 that was published in the last month when we were finalizing the study, they discuss a lot of priorities for the next 5 years, but there's hardly any mention of culture and creative sectors and how they might contribute to realizing those priorities. So despite the positive signals of change that we did capture in our analysis, we also felt that there are still a lot of vulnerabilities that the sector faces and that hold back the sector from becoming really a mainstream partner in EU policymaking and realizing the priorities. We brought all this together in what we call the Futures Triangle. And again, time is too short to explain all this in detail, but I invite you to have a further look in the study. I only want to briefly show you here the two lower parts of the triangle. On the one hand, the barriers, on the other hand, the enablers. Looking at the barriers, what is it exactly that still holds back culture and creative sectors from being mainstreamed in the European project? There's several barriers that we have identified in the study, and that you can see here. It's about still a sector that is fragmented and isolated often from other ecosystems. Just to name one, innovation ecosystems, and you see it there on the slide as well. When we look at innovation, at the existing innovation ecosystems, they're still predominantly dominated or populated by the classic triple helix, quadruple helix, academia, mainly profit organizations, governments. So it's you hardly see culture and creative actors really participating in existing innovation ecosystems. Also, often the existing instruments are not always matching the logics and the values and the frameworks in which culture and creative actors operate. On the other hand, the short-term project logic, which is then dominant in the culture and creative sectors, is also surely an issue when we talk about barriers. At the same time, we call it in the study the pushes of the present. We see momentum and change that could fuel also the further integration of culture and creative sectors, or recognition of culture and creative sectors as transformative actors in society. The connecting role of hubs and collectives, that you see the networks that are being developed across Europe. Emerging frameworks for cross-sectoral collaboration, you see in different member states, initiatives being taken, instruments being installed to promote more cross-sectoral collaboration. Of course, work such as I mentioned, related to culture and health, also help to have these networks being more or developed, or at least emerging. At the European level, an instrument such as STARTS, which promotes collaboration between artists and science, is of course also interesting initiative in that sense. So there are surely things moving. Now, how to, on the one hand, overcome these different barriers, and at the same time, how can we leverage these pushes of the present that we see? In that sense, we identified in the study 4 specific areas of tension, we call it, areas where we feel that policymakers can take action to overcome those tensions. So it's about really overcoming or installing the view that cross-sectoral collaboration with cultural and creative sectors can help in creating better futures for in society, not only technological putting an emphasis on technological innovation, but also on other types of innovation. To, for instance, in the greening, you see it already in the dialogue, and they don't speak so much anymore about the green transition, but the green transition will only happen when it's a just transition. So also this aspect of social innovation becomes more and more important. That there is no arts-driven transformation without, of course, more sustainable working conditions in the sector. The importance of cultural spaces, both for artistic creation and for community interaction and for cross-sectoral collaboration. And cultural spaces we name them in the broadest sense, going from museums to creative hubs to community centers, as maybe, and we talk about it in the study, seeing them also, and not only, but also playing a role as, for instance, research infrastructure in innovation and in pushing innovation in different sectors. And then, of course, mainstreaming also implies that policy silos need to be broken. And so there we formulate a number of policy recommendations also for the European institutions to develop a more cooperative governance structure, both within the European, at the European level, within the European institutions, but also with the international level and the more local member states, regional level. So that brings us to the policy options that we have formulated in the study and that we have ranged or clustered around 4 main areas. So the first area that really focuses on supporting and stimulating this cross-sectoral collaboration, integrating much better the innovation potential of cultural and creative sectors in systems. The second area then focuses on developing a sustainable environment for the development of cultural and creative actors. So this is indeed about enhancing the transformation readiness, but because also at a level, on the side of cultural and creative sectors, still a lot of skills in that sense need to be further developed. The working conditions, but also improving international cooperation as an element that we mentioned there. The spaces, I've already talked about it. The importance of cultural spaces as nodes of interaction, of cohesion, of connecting. That is, when we talk about cultural spaces, it's both about physical spaces, but also the digital spaces and hybrid spaces. So it's in the broadest sense. There, it's very important to address the access barriers that are still there in several of these spaces. Inclusivity, preventing harm and making sure that these are safe spaces for interaction, and then the well-being aspect that we also tackle in that area. And then finally, as I already mentioned, some recommendations that rather relate to governance and installing a more cooperative governance structure in different directions to break the existing policy silos that we still see and that policymakers face. Well, just to conclude some final remarks. And so cultural and creative sectors, based on our analysis, we're not talking about peripheral sectors, but they are central to shaping the futures of Europe. It's continuously important to create awareness with policymakers about, on the one hand, this multidimensional role of cultural and creative sectors in society. We're not talking just about leisure and leisure time. The changing environment in which cultural and creative sectors operate and their related needs, but also the opportunities that might require policy intervention to amplify those opportunities, to, of course, regulate the spaces in which they operate. I haven't mentioned the digital platforms, social media networks. There's still a lot of work there to make those safe spaces for sure. That actually also I want to highlight here that and from our analysis, but also in other studies, we see that policymakers in all regions in the European Union face similar challenges. Of course, there are particular topics that in some regions are more pressing than in others, but there are many challenges rather similar. So those European networks and the policy forums that exist are very valuable to bench learn and to exchange. Already mentioned the Voices of Culture, but also, for instance, the OMC working group, which is then rather policy learning and exchange among policymakers. And then having those EU policy priorities as a radar can also maybe and aligning activities with those policy priorities. These policy priorities are, of course, also reflected in EU funding opportunities often. So this is for sure also a linkage to make when it comes to getting access to funding opportunities at European level. So I would like to leave it here and then maybe stop sharing to see you all back.
Thank you, Isabelle. Thank you for the well-packaged presentation.
Yes.
And we'll definitely share it with you, the slides you just presented. Maybe Mathieu, would you like to jump on?
Yes, je reparle en français, Isabelle, you don't mind. Oui, je pense que c'est intéressant. Enfin, l'idée de la discussion qu'on a eue avec Delphine en préparant ce cours, c'est de se dire, OK, qu'est-ce qu'il y a là-dedans qui peut parler à la Wallonie, à la Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles et à Bruxelles. C'est qu'en fait, on se rend compte qu'il y a des réalités qui existent au niveau européen, qui existent dans toutes les régions, que le contexte est le même pour tout le monde et qu'il y a la Wallonie n'est pas forcément moins bien lotie que d'autres en termes de problématiques de faire comprendre aux politiciens qui font les lois, qui mettent en place les moyens de financement, de faire comprendre l'importance de la culture. Donc ici, je pense qu'il y avait cette étude qu'Isabelle a réalisée avec ses collègues et les experts montre quand même des éléments intéressants en termes de cross-fertilisation, en termes d'intégration des ICC dans le monde de l'innovation. Et donc, par exemple, si on prend la Wallonie, on sait qu'on a discuté beaucoup de la question, et en Bruxelles la même chose, de la stratégie S3, qui n'incluait pas tous les ICC. Ça a été une discussion assez mouvementée et nourrie avec les acteurs qui géraient la S3. Nous, on a accompagné, IDEA Consulta a accompagné la S3 aussi, et on a bien vu qu'il y avait ces silos. Ces silos continuent à exister entre ce qui se fait dans la S3 et ce qui existe dans la culture. Or, il commence à y avoir vraiment comme l'a dit Isabelle, des évidences qui sont sorties dans certains rapports sur l'intérêt d'intégrer des acteurs culturels pour la question du well-being, de futurs qui sont plus équilibrés en termes de greening, et ainsi de suite. Donc, je pense que ça valait la peine de venir ici. Je pense que ça peut nourrir une nouvelle version éventuelle de votre mémorandum qui avait été écrit il y a un bout de temps, et peut-être un peu nourrir aussi les interactions que vous pourriez avoir avec les policymakers de la Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles. En début de mandature, il y a des interactions dans des commissions du Parlement, et donc avoir ce genre d'éléments nous semblait intéressant à partager avec vous. Mais peut-être, Delphine, je m'arrête là et voir s'il y a des questions auxquelles on peut répondre.
Tout à fait. Peut-être avant de passer le bâton de parole pour les questions, j'avais peut-être envie de vous poser une question, enfin peut-être une double question. La première, c'est dans vos analyses. Isabelle, is it okay in French or do you like me to? Okay, can I ask the question in French and you answer in English? Dans vos analyses de benchmark, est-ce que des initiatives comme WEC, vous avez pu en voir sur le terrain dans d'autres pays européens, donc ce type de structuration d'opérateurs qui sont à la fois dans la technologie, innovation, la recherche, la culture, et est-ce que c'est pertinent ce type de structuration d'écosystème? Et la deuxième question, ça touche au lobbying international qui est en train de se structurer et qui va démarrer véritablement l'année prochaine pour faire en 2030 de la culture un objectif de développement durable, ce qui n'est pas le cas encore aujourd'hui dans les 17 SDG. Mais si ça passe, si c'est le cas, alors à ce moment-là, il y aura quand même un cadre international qui pourra être plus structurant pour faire en sorte que la culture se retrouve dans les politiques européennes, les politiques aux différents niveaux. Voilà, j'ai cette double question, peut-être voilà, donner quelques éléments de réponse et puis après passer le bâton de parole pour le dernier gros quart d'heure qu'il y a.
Of course, when it comes to benchmarking and looking specifically at are there similar initiatives and networks as Wake, this was of course not the specific focus of the study, maybe also, but from the side of, because we took primarily the perspective of culture and creative sectors and cultural networks, not so much from the economic side. And here I already start talking in policy silos, but that's also often how networks are being structured, unfortunately, and which is one of the issues. You see very little networks that manage to combine and bring together actors. I would also say advocates for this topic. There is, of course, Culture Action Europe. When we look at European networks, does a lot of activities, bringing together, also trying also to be a voice for the whole sector widely. But there's also on the side of culture and creative sectors, this is there I already touched upon. Also a difficulty, and I mentioned it in the barriers, is the fragmentation. So you have a lot of networks, initiatives, but then they represent one part of the sector, one specific type of voice. So this fragmentation and how to bring together all the relevant actors that you want to gather to bring a message across to policymakers about this this topic and this transversal role that culture and creative sectors can play in other policy domains is for sure an element. So if you manage to do that in Wake and bring together all those different perspectives and bring across a coordinated message to policymakers, I would think that would be a great thing.
Maybe Isabelle, to give an example, inside the EKI project, do you have already like communities working on those aspects of bringing innovation towards other industry silos?
Sure, but it's very often bottom up. So in the field, you do see a lot of interesting connections. For instance, only yesterday we were talking about the relationships between gaming and performing arts, but also the development of better artificial intelligence systems and performing arts. It was also there how to capture human movements and so in where dancers collaborate with high-tech research institutes developing those systems. So you do see things happening. Also in the health sector, I talked about it already. I think all the projects being funded under the STARTS program are interesting areas where you see interesting collaborations sustainable development, arts and crafts, for instance, crafts being introduced, or at least working on how to find sustainable models for introducing heritage crafts in construction. Because heritage crafts, for instance, have a very interesting value when it comes to thinking about more sustainable building techniques, also the materials being used. So how can you, how can those old techniques be incorporated in construction sector, being uptaken there? Of course, in our society and where we are now. But so these explorations, the research that is attached to it is often still difficult because you have very little research infrastructures and spaces where those types of actors come together. So that's just to give only a couple of examples.
Sorry.
Delphine, your second question?
About the SDG, Sustainable Development.
Oh, yes.
Dedicated to culture in 2030. It might be, it's not, it's going to start, the lobbying is going to start on the global scale.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually lobbying that is being going on since I would say, since the SDGs have been published. There has been a lot of discussion, debate, exchange on the fact that culture was not really represented there explicitly in the SDGs. And a lot of lobby on this, and I must say that only very recently there was again quite a disappointing initiative and communication on that side. So not sure where we are going with this, but also in the study we highlight, and that's also what the message has been in the past years, that the public value of culture for sustainable development in society is very important, and that it should get somehow a place in it. But we're not there yet, as
Belgium is going to be favorable to this. La Belgique va être favorable à ce positionnement. Peut-être qu'il y a des questions justement pour les 10 minutes qu'il reste. N'hésitez pas à vous manifester en levant la petite main.
I see there's a question in the chat from somebody who asked, have you analyzed the EIT culture and creativity? Not analyzed in much detail. Of course, we mentioned them as one, of course, of the important initiatives that have been taken at the European level to establish this. So this is for sure a recognition of the importance of culture and creative sectors as an innovation ecosystem. There are now, I think, 2 years in operation, and for an EIT or for a KIC, that means that they are still in the startup phase, still finding their way, the focus. It's and you see, so I have connections with what's going on there through, among others, the EKI project where we are in. What you see is that, that the EIT, so the KIC for culture and creativity is, if I'm not mistaken, the 9th ecosystem being supported. and that they see that it's not an innovation ecosystem as some of the traditional KICs, like energy or so. And so also from EIT, it's really searching how to deal with it. Because the traditional instruments, ways of looking at innovation and what to expect as an outcome of innovation, and what are the values that drive innovation in the sector, who are the actors. It's a sector that is populated primarily by very, very small companies. So that's still something that they are in this startup phase, really still looking at how to match culture and creative sectors with the concept of a KIC as they have had it in for other sectors.
I can come with some more information about that in French. Les KIC et les critères du EIT Accelerator sont très portés vers de l'innovation disruptive. Donc, ils attendent d'avoir des vrais game changers en termes d'innovation. Et le problème, c'est que ce n'est pas forcément applicable directement, parce que les critères utilisés par EIT ne sont pas forcément applicables aux innovations qui peuvent émerger du monde de la culture. C'est déjà compliqué pour des acteurs wallons, par exemple, de rentrer dans des EIT accélérateurs parce que les jurés des KIC et des EIT sont vraiment très exigeants en termes de preuves de capacité d'impact important, et notamment impact économique. Et donc, c'est pas toujours évident de venir avec une innovation dans ce cadre-là où on peut déjà exempté annoncer quel va être l'impact sociétal ou l'impact économique qui va être généré par ça. Donc, je pense que ce qui est vrai déjà pour des startups digitales, des startups de l'énergie ou des startups de la transition énergétique, par exemple, à mon avis, est aussi assez compliqué. Donc, peut-être en termes de policy par rapport à ce genre de dispositif de type EIT, il y a peut-être une question aussi de KPI, de critères. Hein. Peut-être je peux juste signaler à ce niveau-là que, par exemple, Isabelle et ses collègues sont en train de travailler sur un outil de monitoring avec des indicateurs de performance pour les écosystèmes digitaux liés aux ICC en Flandre. On est encore seulement au début de ces KPI, de cette mise en place de KPI qui sont vraiment adaptés au secteur des ICC, je pense. Et donc, ça peut participer aussi à cette question-là. Donc, il faut aussi, quand on discute avec des gens qui vont financer ce genre de démarche-là, expliquer que le contexte, il y a une spécificité au secteur des ICC à ce niveau-là. S'il y a d'autres questions. Loïc, est-ce qu'on a répondu à ta question concernant le EIT?
Oui, c'était sur l'analyse de l'impact. Je me dis que si ça délivre pas, c'est quand même plusieurs centaines de millions d'euros qui ont été mis là-dedans. Ouais. Si ça délivre pas, ça va être un frein pour le secteur culturel pour demander des choses dans la prochaine programmation européenne. Donc voilà. Donc c'était une question pour voir si la Commission européenne avait analysé positivement les actions du KIC culture jusqu'à présent. Voilà.
Mm-hmm. Yes, to really say anything about what the impact has been is at this moment really still way too early, I would say. Mm-hmm. It will still take quite a bit of time to be able to say anything on its long-term impact. Mm-hmm. But that's not only for this KIC, which is starting even for KICs that are already longer there. It's a very heavy structure. Also at the European Commission, when we kind of started at the same moment, more or less, the EKI project and the KIC. And even from the European Commission, the policy officer said, oh, well, in the whole duration of EKIP, which will last 2.5 years, don't expect too much of the kick yet to see in the field. We count on at least 2 years to get this thing up and running, and yeah, just to say that it's and they're well aware of it, and Mathieu, a number of our colleagues have been involved in evaluating the other kicks and the kick concept on behalf of EIT. So there's also quite some discussion on the concept of the kicks as well. But that's another discussion, I would say.
Est-ce qu'il y a encore d'autres questions?
Oui, on a encore 2 minutes, profitez-en. On va essayer vraiment de coller au schedule. On reviendra vers vous avec les infos. Hein. Donc là, le replay, on mettra tout sur le web cloud, le replay, les slides.
Est-ce que moi, je peux poser une question du coup?
Bien sûr, évidemment.
Est-ce que dans l'audience, il y a des gens qui ont déjà essayé ou obtenu des projets liés à l'Europe et qui peuvent dire, voilà, qui ont des questions sur cet aspect-là, d'approche de l'Europe sur la question des ICC? Faire un petit...
On peut peut-être mettre dans le chat, peut-être.
Oui, bonjour. Bonjour Isabelle.
Bonjour, Virginie.
Oui, par le passé, mais à l'époque où c'était la DG Grow qui émettait pas mal d'appels, ça a été la première à innover en ICC. Et donc oui, on a été dans 2 consortiums à l'époque. En revanche, très difficile de monter dans les projets Horizon, qui sont les plus dotés et plus orientés ICC actuellement. Peut-être par la nature de notre activité, qui est de financement, puisque ce sont des projets qui sont plus de type recherche universitaire en innovation. Donc voilà, sur Horizon, même si on réduit sur le cluster 2, etc., c'est très très complexe, d'autant plus que maintenant il y a un mixte de toutes les attentes dont Isabelle a parlé, attentes en termes de développement, d'innovation, de décloisonnement, de durabilité, de tourisme, d'impact sur la société. Et donc, c'est compliqué parce qu'un seul programme demande à développer pas mal de paramètres. Et donc, moi, j'ai trouvé que l'accès à ces programmes n'était pas évident. Donc, voilà, c'est juste en témoignage. Mais je pense qu'au niveau innovation pure, innovation peut-être appliquée, il y a certainement des choses à faire. Mais voilà, j'aimerais qu'on puisse stimuler, en tout cas, peut-être les programmes qui étaient des programmes peut-être un peu moins ambitieux. Voilà, ne parlons pas du KIC, parce qu'effectivement, là, il faudra quand même quelques années. Mais les programmes les appels de la DG Grow étaient quand même, il me semble, je ne sais pas ce que Isabelle tu en penses, mais étaient peut-être mieux calibrés pour une évolution rapide, pour avoir un impact rapide. C'était des projets, puisque la DG EAC n'a plus, elle, de projets franchement liés au développement de l'innovation et des ICC. Donc, c'est Connect to Growth. Voilà.
Yeah. Just a small reaction on indeed getting into Horizon it's a challenge for everyone. Success rates are really low. But at the same time, for instance, I had a talk with somebody from the EIT, from the KIC Climate, where they had smaller calls, open calls for innovation, with culture and creative actors, and there was not so much reaction from it. Is it promotion? Is it because they're not so visible? And that's especially with those smaller calls, is how to communicate them, how to get to know of all these different things, because that's an evolution that you see in many DGs and programs, is that they tend to now launch calls, also, for instance, and Virginie, you know, creatives-VUB, that the European Commission hands over or gives an assignment to a consortium, and that within this consortium, it is asked to manage part of that funding and distribute it through cascade funding, and through open calls to the sector and to smaller projects. In creatives-VUB, we have a number of these examples. The Goethe Institute has been assigned for a number of these projects. In Performing Europe, where we are in, it was in the call that, if I'm not mistaken, 70% or something from the total amount that we were granted, it should be redistributed through open calls to projects and experimentation in the performing arts sector. But being able to follow all these different other channels of possible funding is challenging.
Donc, comme le temps file, je pense, Delphine, que ce que je peux dire, moi, par rapport à la continuité des premières discussions qu'on a vues avec WEC au-dessus du quai 10 il y a 3 ans, garder une bonne vision de la veille, comme vient de le dire Isabelle, sur des calls, et d'avoir peut-être une répartition des tâches sur le fait de faire une veille de différents calls. Et comme vous êtes un collectif, réfléchir à avoir aussi, comme Isabelle l'a dit, essayer de rentrer dans des appels, parfois même ambitieux, mais en allant chercher des bons partenaires internationaux. Je pense que Louis pourrait témoigner de futurs médias hubs et ainsi de suite avec VRT, et d'aller chercher au grand international des partenaires qui sont prêts à monter avec un collectif, et ensuite essayer de faire percoler l'argent, les calls de l'Europe en cascade funding vers la communauté, vers les institutions innovantes au sein de la Wallonie, de la Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles. Je pense que ça, c'est la bonne pratique qu'on peut donner vers l'Europe aujourd'hui, c'est d'essayer d'avoir une forme de représentativité de la région, pouvoir rentrer dans ces plateformes, d'être partenaire de ces plateformes ou partenaire de consortium, et derrière ça, d'essayer d'obtenir les budgets pour les petites entités, parce que aider les membres de la communauté ou les PME wallonnes à aller direct vers l'Europe, vers des EIT accélérateurs ensuite, c'est vraiment compliqué, les thresholds sont très élevés. Donc, je pense que vraiment, allez, si on donne un peu une vision un peu globale, je pense vraiment essayer de rentrer plutôt dans ce type de consortium peut être vraiment considéré comme étant une bonne pratique que vous pouvez envisager de manière collective. Voilà. Et si je donne un parallèle, dans la S3, ils ont fait des initiatives d'innovation stratégique. Je pense que si vous réfléchissez comme une initiative d'innovation stratégique dans cette approche vers l'Europe, vous aurez une bonne pratique.
Absolument. Je pense que là, on peut peut-être clôturer là-dessus. C'est un bon message, et c'est une invitation à être effectivement pensé structurant, s'appuyer sur la force qu'on a ici d'avoir réuni à un endroit des acteurs d'une multidisciplinarité quand même assez importante, et ne pas être que effectivement sur les sujets culture, mais on est vraiment très très diversifié, et donc de pouvoir en faire une force pour à partir de 2025 monter effectivement sur des appels à projets. Je voyais Creative Europe Média relance un appel business model Enfin voilà, donc effectivement cette veille est hyper importante et donc on lancera effectivement, on sera peut-être un peu après le Geek Festival, mais un appel effectivement pour mutualiser toutes ces informations-là et voir comment on peut s'organiser. Moi je reprends un petit peu sur le Wake for Policy, donc l'idée c'est qu'on ait un rendez-vous comme celui-ci un peu tous les 2 mois et donc on vous proposera ici avec Stéphanie Toussaint, je ne sais pas si elle est encore dans le call, le prochain, on proposera un rendez-vous sur une autre thématique, mais donc pour pouvoir effectivement ensemble monter en compétence sur ces sujets-là et échanger sur des effectivement candidatures communes. Il me reste à vous remercier du fond du cœur. Thank you Isabelle, thank you Mathieu.
Thank you.
For kick-offing this Wake for Policy program. And let's keep in touch. On vous souhaite une toute bonne fin de semaine à toutes et tous. Et on reste connectés. Let's wake it.
Et on se voit au KIC.
Et à très bientôt au KIC, effectivement.